Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and you know that I believe in the importance of all of us as scholars, activists, and so-called leaders, whatever it is we claim to be, stepping out into the world and really trying to make a difference and building institutions, particularly black institutions. And one of the great builders that I know of, and a guy that I just have so much respect for, is Pastor Kevin Cosby out of Louisville, Kentucky. I have Pastor Cosby, who has been the pastor of St. Stephen's Church in Kentucky for the last 36 years. And before I begin, I want to ask my brother, how you doing today?
Quite well, man. Quite well. Thank you so very much for the introduction, man. I have such a profound respect for you and the great work that you're doing in lifting our people, man.
Oh
Thank
no.
you.
Well, thank you very much, man. The feeling's entirely mutual, and a lot of people know about the great work that you're doing down at St. Stephen's. It's not just that it is impactful, but it is also unique and very thoughtful. You've actually you've been one of the pastors that I think has been really able to expand the boundaries of your church and impact the community around you, elevate and educate the people, not just in your congregation, but in the community, and really do some things that have set a foundation that I think is so impressive. And so, in order to avoid me confusing people by trying to talk about everything at once, we'll just start with congratulations, man. Simmons College. Also, by the way, everybody, he's also the president of Simmons College. I forgot to mention that part. Simmons College is now officially, from what I understand, the 107th HBCU in this country. Is that correct?
107th Historical Black College University in America.
Wow! Congratulations, brother.
Thank you so very much. I sometimes I just when I think about it, it's just beyond my imagination and comprehension what has taken place. I mean, it is just a remarkable achievement for Simmons, and it can be a transformational uh, achievement for Louisville, state of Kentucky, and the nation.
Mm.
So I'm really excited about it.
Wow. Now, I'm not entirely familiar with the process of becoming, accredited as an HBCU, but I assume that it is very, very difficult. I mean, I don't hear about this kind of thing happening very often. How long did it take? I mean, how much work did it take for you to actually achieve that status?
That's a good question, and my response when people ask how long did it take to become an historical black college university, my answer is 136 years.
Wow.
136 years.
Well, you don't look a day older than 105.
Oh,
So 136 years. Please explain.
and what I mean by that is it is because they were, speaking of our ancestors, that I am. So the beautiful thing about a historical black college and when a HBCU becomes an official designated HBCU by the Department of Education, that status cannot be bestowed upon an institution unless they have continuity, history, and longevity, which Simmons College of Kentucky has. I cannot create history. No one can create history. We inherit history. So the designation of an HBCU in 2015 simply is a recognition that our predecessors not only had vision, but they had grit and determination to keep an institution open that was facing incredible odds. Simmons was started in 1879 officially. In fact, the vision for Simmons was 150 years ago when the newly freed Baptist slaves in Kentucky met here in Louisville 4 months after the close of the Civil War, recognizing that freedom meant nothing to a people who were uninformed and uneducated. They did not wait for what was known as the Freedmen's Bureau of the federal government to start schools. In fact, Simmons was part of a self determination, Black empowerment tradition of African Americans that in which newly freed African Americans started institutions for themselves by themselves. It was the original FUBU. Uh,
The original FUBU. I like that.
yeah, for us by us. And the reason why was because the schools that were established by the federal government was controlled by whites. In fact, they were named after uh, white leaders of the era. So Hampton, great school, was a white person. And Hampton restricted the type of education that African Americans could have at the turn of the century. Basically, it was industrial education, which guaranteed that African Americans would remain on the lowest rung of the social ladder. Morehouse was a Baptist minister, he a white Baptist minister. Spelman was white. Fisk was white. These were all white. They were black schools, but to a great degree, they were controlled by whites. There were
Wow.
schools that were started by African Americans, named after prominent African Americans for the purpose of African Americans being self-determining. Simmons was at the vanguard of that movement, named for William J. Simmons. William J. Simmons is a name it's unfortunate that we do not know who William J. Simmons is, because William J. Simmons wrote a book in the 19th century entitled called Men of Mark, and to this day it is the largest compilation of sketches on freed African American men who achieved excellence through education. It's a 900-page book, and it is a classic. In fact, it's a part of the public domain and can be downloaded by, I think it's either North Carolina Press or Duke Press. Ebony reprinted it back in the 70s as an Ebony classic. But just the forward to the book, in which Dr. Simmons talks about, and I quote him verbatim, the means and manner of a man's elevation is education. And he trumpets the triumphs of the immediate post Civil War African American who achieved in 20 or 25 years literacy, the literacy rate that African Americans were able to achieve after the Civil War was incredible. At the close of the war, only 5% of the newly freed Africans were literate, just 5%. And the 5%, we talk about Du Bois is 10%, but the fact it was the 5% who in 50 years did something that no ethnic group in world history has done, including the Asians. In 50 years, from 1865 to 1915, by 1915, 5% literacy in the African American community went from 5% to like 70%. It was unheard
Wow.
of. And that was because there was a insatiable appetite and hunger to be educated. Du Bois and Booker T had their differences, but one thing they both agreed on was that there was this desire on the part of African Americans to get an education. All classrooms were filled. You did not, it did not matter how young you were, how old you were, you had old people in class having a desire to be educated. Now, Simmons, William J. Simmons, and Simmons College was at the vanguard of this movement in terms of independent black colleges. Another one would be Selma University in Selma, Montgomery. That's the school that Vernon Johns went to. Vernon Johns was the predecessor of Martin Luther King Jr. at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And these schools by blacks, for blacks, named after blacks. William J. Simmons was an African American scholar. Unfortunately, we don't know much about him because he died young. He died at the age of 39. But we do know some of the sons and daughters of William J. Simmons. One of them would be Ida B. Wells. When you read the biography of Ida B. Wells, she says, I would not have gone into journalism had it not been for the mentorship of William J. Simmons. He also is the founder of the Black Baptist denomination in America. So all Black Baptists, which is the largest denomination, black denomination in the world, even though there are offshoots and tributaries that have sprung up from the organization that he started. You have everything from National Baptist Incorporated, National Baptist Unincorporated, Progressive Baptist, Full Gospel Baptist. But the progenitor of the Baptist movement was William J. Simmons, and he established this for the sole purpose of empowering African Americans. And just an incredible man. So Simmons got started in 1879, and for 51 years, from 1879 to 1930, it was one of the preeminent private black colleges in the South. It was one of the few black colleges controlled by African Americans with an African American faculty and president that had a medical school, law school, liberal arts college, seminary. Um, it gave birth to what was called the Baptist Women's Educational Convention. The Baptist Women's Educational Convention was the first organized group of Black Baptist women in the country, in fact, in the world, for the sole purpose of educating Black people. William J. Simmons was a womanist. Um, Many Black women, like there's a book out by Evelyn Higginbotham. Evelyn Higginbotham is a scholar, a historian at Harvard. She wrote a book called Righteous Discontent, the Baptist Women's Movement. She's the one that coined the phrase, the politics of respectability. And Simmons College was one of the main promoters of the politics of respectability. And, I've often heard people criticize that phrase, the politics of respectability, as though it's an it's accommodationist phrase. But when they said politics of responsibility, or the politics of respectability, excuse me, it was not a phrase that was used for the purpose of being respectable, that we might be accepted by whites. The politics of respectability is a phrase that was used that Blacks might be responsible and respectable to each other for the purpose of building our own communities, our own institutions, our own businesses, our own families, our own nations. And that unless we are respectable, unless we value ourselves and see our self-worth, that we will be unable to build our own communities.
Wow. Well, it's interesting you give that description, and I'm glad you laid out that history because, one of the things that impressed me the most at Simmons, I actually was honored with the opportunity to be the commencement speaker last year, and I remember hearing the story about former slaves building this institution, and the fact that there is just such an investment by you, and I think people get a chance to hear this as you talk, an investment by you just in the idea of Black people building things, building communities, building families. And if you look at the limited set of options that we have when it comes to kind of dealing with some of the struggles that we face as a community, it seems that that's got to be the best option available for us. I mean, we know that the liberal politics has not done it. We know that conservative right wing politics isn't going to fit. And it almost seems that we have to look to the past in order to move forward. So it's interesting when you talk about the great work that you've been able to be a part of to resurrect the greatness of Simmons College. And ironically, we're releasing a film next week called Resurrecting Black Wall Street. And I think that one of the things that we connect on is this idea of looking to the past and saying, okay, that's the secret. That's
That's
what
the
we
secret.
need, right? Let's go back to segregation. Let's really re-examine the last 100 years and see, okay, what has this integration? What has this really done for Black folks? How do we move forward? Because we know that we have a society that is naturally integrated, right? You're going to have natural partnerships across ethnicities. You can't isolate, but at the same time, integration. What has that done for us? Can you give me a synopsis in terms of what your thoughts are in terms of how we might reevaluate the movement toward integration over the last 60 years?
I totally agree with you. And what disturbs me is African Americans starting their history with December the 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks sat down on that bus. Our history predates December the 1st, 1955. We have a rich history of institution building, of defiance, of empowerment that needs to be revisited. The golden era for African Americans. Now, I'm not talking about in terms of opportunities, but I'm talking about in terms of institutions, was between 1865 and 1954 on the eve of the Brown decision. And that's because we had our own institutions. The Black community went from segregation to desegregation to integration to disintegration. Integration became a form of disintegration in the sense that the black professional class, the Jeffersons, if you will, got co-opted into white-controlled institutions, leaving the masses of African Americans without leaders. And in fact, there may be only, when it comes to integration, the 7% rule. And the 7% rule is that once a community, a predominantly white community or a predominantly white institution, exceeds 7% African American, then there is white flight, because there's a fear that the institution or the community is becoming too black, and in the mind of white supremacy, that is a formula for decline. So the question is, will African Americans ever be, quote unquote, fully integrated, the masses, into American society? I don't think it's going to happen. We've been advocating a form of integration since '68 with the open housing, but it has not happened. Instead, what has happened is the leadership of the Black community has left the Black community, not only in terms of physical relocation, but psychological relocation. It's almost like Black leadership has become sheepdogs. The sheepdog is the ultimate oxymoron, because here comes some dogs needing something to eat, and they're sneaking up on some sheep, and the one who turns them in is the sheepdog. So he's forgotten, the sheepdog, that he is canine. And that's because when he was a little puppy, he was raised by sheep. He was taught sheep history. He went to a sheep church. He saw sheep images. He read sheep books. He had a sheep psychology. So therefore, while he is a dog, psychologically, he's a sheep. And he's more concerned about the advancement of the sheep than he is about the advancement of dogs. Well, that's what happens when you allow other people to educate your people, to indoctrinate your people. I believe in strong Black institutions like a strong Black church in which I pastor, historical Black colleges and universities, because they help to indoctrinate African Americans on who their identity should be and who their loyalty should be with. It's what Carter G. Woodson talked about, the miseducation of the Black man, or the miseducation of the Negro. Our people have been miseducated because we have no loyalty to the advancement of our people. I believe in Black institutions. You know, I find it interesting that as the president of the college, one of my primary responsibilities is to fundraise for Simmons. And when I would go to many of the foundations in our state, our community, and tell the story of Simmons and ask them to support Simmons College, I'll often be met with a response, is not Simmons a return to segregation? And I'm thinking, what do you mean return? We've never left segregation. The masses of African Americans are still segregated. Secondly, why is it all right when you have a historically white institution like the University of Kentucky, where you went to school, or the University of Louisville, where I am a trustee member? You have a predominantly white institution in which it may be 90% white, 3% Black, and 7% other. That is integrated. But when it's predominantly Black and inclusive, and open, but blacks are the majority, that's segregated. Well, I find that to be white supremacy at its worst. To be different is not to be deficient. It's just to be different. And so it takes a commitment on the part of conscience people, be they African American males or females or whoever. It takes a commitment to strengthen institutions that serve the masses. Integrated institutions do not serve the masses. Institutions that are like Simmons are black churches that are radicalized black churches, are churches that serve the masses. And it takes a commitment. We were at the very bottom when I went to Simmons. When I went to Simmons 10 years ago, we had no money, we had no accreditation. We were in a building that was built, one building that we built back in 1949, and it was, for all practical purpose, dysfunctional because we could only use the first floor. The bottom part was mold infested. We were on the verge of closing, but I knew the history of the school. And because I have a church that's in the hood, that is the largest predominantly African American church in the state of Kentucky with over 16,000 members on the roll, then we are a mega church. But what makes you a mega church is your mission. You can't be a mega church if you got a mini mission. You got to have if you're a mega church, you got to have a mega mission. And our mega mission is the hood. We're in the hood. I live in the hood. I work in the hood. So we used our resources, not only our financial resources, but our human capital to help augment what Simmons College did not have. I gave all of my salary back to the school for 10 years. I would not take a salary. So the trustee board had allocated like $75,000 annually for my salary. But I gave every penny of it back. I would not take a dime from that school. So I gave in excess, almost $1 million when it comes to the monies I gave back and the monies that I was raising and not taking any reimbursement for travel. Over the 10 years, I gave my money back. And that's what it takes. Dr. King did the same thing. What made Dr. King such a great leader, or Malcolm such a great leader, is because they gave back to the community. They gave back to build our institutions. And now, as a result of it, Simmons College, we lost our campus in 1930. The original Simmons College, we lost it to the University of Louisville, and they turned it into their segregated division. We are back on our original campus. We've got the building we built back in the 1940s. So we got 3 campuses. In fact, we even purchased the campus of the Sons of the American Revolution. That's part of our footprint. And we're the fastest growing college percentage-wise in the Commonwealth. And it's a much needed institution because it's an institution that's serving the masses. I can talk to a brother on the streets and say to him, man, are you in school? Are you in college? And boys, there is not one brother that I have ever approached. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care if his pants are sagging. His hope is not sagging even when his pants are sagging. His aspirations are not sagging even when his pants are sagging, because I will approach a brother who will have a gun on him and say, hey, man, do you want to go to college? Do you want to get in school? And, it's what Benjamin May said. May said the Morehouse puts a crown above the heads of black men and bids them grow tall enough to wear it. And that's what I do in the hood. I say, hey, man, you want to go to school? And his eyes pole vault because somebody sees possibilities in him. And most of these kids that I see on the street are so much smarter than me, boys. And you're one of the most brilliant men that I know. You're the most brilliant man I know on the planet. But some of these kids in the street, man, you would have to sit at their feet. Boys, they're so brilliant, but they just don't know it. They don't know how great they are. And if we can reintroduce them to their unknown self, That's what black institutions do. Reintroduce black people to their unknown self. We can change the present trajectory that we're seeing in many urban areas.
Wow, man. Well, I think that everything you're saying is right on point. I'm literally sitting here and I keep looking down because I'm taking notes as you're talking because and this is one of the reasons why I wanted our readers to really get to know you is because you give this wisdom every week. When you speak to your congregation, you are bringing this philosophy into your university, and not in any way to disparage the amazing HBCUs in our country, but not every historically black college has leadership that thinks that way. I'll just say that, and I like what you were saying about the mega church and having the mega mission. So it's kind of a double whammy. I mean, on one hand, you've got a scholar and campus president who's thinking progressively in a certain way. But then on the other hand, you have a pastor who understands the full capacity of the power of the black church. When you focus that energy and that passion and those resources and to just an amazing mission. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing. And one thing that crossed my mind when you were talking about serving the masses versus serving token or just a few of us individuals that get the chance to integrate. It makes me think about a conversation I had this week with Damon Dash from who's had started Rockefeller Records with Jay Z back in the '90s. And without Damon Dash, there would be no Jay Z. There probably wouldn't even be a Kanye West. And there certainly would have been a Rockefeller and he told me all this in detail, and I kind of thought about the story, and I said, okay, wait a minute, I think you it seems like you were the person that put all this together. And he said, yes, I was. Dame is kind of bombastic in that way, but he's brilliant. And one thing that Dame brought up that was really interesting, that I thought about when you told your story about integration versus institution building is, he said one of the conversations he had with Jay Z, and this is all public record, I'm not sharing anything private. He said, so here we were, everyone said no, we weren't, no one would give Jay Z a chance, and so we built our own company because we had nowhere else to go. And he
Right.
said, so eventually we got to a point where we were doing very well. We were making millions of dollars, and we didn't need the Def Jams. We didn't need these, the Universals and all these other companies. And he said, but Jay wanted to go become the president of Def Jam and pretty much disintegrate Rockefeller. And he
Mm.
said, I looked at him and said, why would you leave a company that you own where you are hiring and employing all these black people to go be president of a company that somebody else owns? Because you go off and you become president of Def Jam, that's really good for Jay-Z, but that's one person. But when you run an institution, you're doing well for yourself, and you're also employing dozens, if not hundreds, of African American people. And
Yes.
so I think that idea of institution building is incredibly important. And so I want to ask you this, and I just brought that Jay Z thing up not because
Yeah. That's
I
great.
need you to feel compelled to comment on it, but I think that that's a parallel that all of us can understand. We've
Right.
got to build something. We got to plant things, and sometimes these trees grow over several generations,
Right.
right? They don't grow. You are, from what I understand, you're the third generation of scholar, leader, pastor that has been affiliated with Simmons. Am I correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My grandfather, who's the organizing pastor of St. Stephen Church, which was established in 1926, came to Louisville from a community outside of Lexington, Kentucky, to attend Simmons in the 1920s. He was pre-literate, brilliant man, but pre-literate because there were no colleges and schools for African Americans to attend in the state of Kentucky, with the exception of Kentucky State, which was primarily industrial education. He wanted a classical education. And so he came to Simmons and got a degree in mathematics. I have a picture of him on the steps of Simmons College as the president of his sixth grade class, and he's about 24, 25 years old. So my grandfather graduated from Simmons with a degree in mathematics and then integrated theological education for Southern Baptists. He was the first black man to graduate from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary here in Louisville, Kentucky, back in 1951. And then my mother, who was a trained musician, taught at Simmons College. She was a music professor at Simmons. And now I'm the third generation. I'm the president, and my daughter who has an EDD, is a professor also at Simmons. So that's four generations connected to one institution dating back to the 1920s. And now here we are almost 100 years later.
And I like the fact that you bring that up because I think that many of us have a difficult time thinking beyond the here and now. I see that, the thing I'm building, oh, this is nothing compared to these institutions that I could go work for. I could go serve, a company that's worth $1 billion. Why should I build a company that's worth $1,000? But what I see with you and your daughter is I see a vision that was kept alive 50, 70, 50, 60, 70 years ago by your grandparents who said, okay, things are tough now. We're in the depression, and I don't know how we're going to hold on, but we're going to keep this thing going because maybe a generation or two down the line, a door will open for us to achieve the greatness that we deserve. You see what I
Yes.
mean? And I think that's what I tell people to understand that you might create something now that seems insignificant to you, but you got to take pride in it because
You
it's
got to,
yours. It's
yeah,
yours.
yes.
And I love that about you, man. And so just so you know, I like to cut the interviews at 40 minutes only because Facebook only allows videos of up to 40 minutes in length, and I want to make sure this gets on Facebook because if they block this video, I'm gonna be mad because I want people to hear from you. So let's get down to the business side and the nitty gritty of this, man. Um, First of all, first and foremost, how can people give to Simmons? I want people to go give to make donations. Where can they go to do that?
Uh, we are in the process of putting together our web page in which you'll be able to make donations. In order to sustain our institutions, I have discovered it's going to take, first of all, integrity on the part of leadership. Um, as I said, I did not accept a salary from Simmons for 10 years. And I did that because it gave me the moral platform in which to ask for money. If I'm going to be the leader, then I have to lead by example and I must be willing to make sacrifices. So our institutions must run with integrity, impeccable integrity. So that's the type of leadership environment that I've attempted to create at Simmons. Secondly, we must operate with competency. I have brilliant African Americans and Anglo scholars who are committed to the particular constituency that is our target demographic, namely the urban poor. We're not restricted to the urban poor, but that's our target demographic. And then, of course, the technology which we are putting in place in order to give people an opportunity to give micro gifts to Simmons. It's not going to be the big corporate donations, while we need those big corporate dollars and those corporate grants that sustain Black institutions. It is the micro gifts, of the consistent micro gifts of the masses, the $5 a week or the $5 a month. If we get enough of those $5 a month donations, $10 a month donations, Simmons not only will survive, but Simmons College will thrive, and we can become an exemplary model of what we can do when we are unified. So in the meantime, what I would suggest, let me give you the number of Simmons College. The number of Simmons College, the phone number is 502-776-1443. And I would ask for our COO. His name is Robert Harvey. He's a brilliant young scholar. He's working on his doctorate at Duke. He has his master's from Harvard, and he's our COO. So if you could call that number or call the number and ask for Christine Cosby Gaither. Christine Cosby Gaither. And again, that number is 502-776-1443. And if we can get enough micro gifts, I mean, it is just amazing what Simmons College has been able to accomplish. We are an HBCU. We came from nowhere, and now we're an HBCU. We're an accredited College. We offer bachelor's degrees in business administration, communications, sociology, associate's degree in general studies, theological classes that is rooted in liberation and black church radicalism. We have an articulation agreement with the University of Louisville. So we function almost as a de facto junior college because 64 of our credit hours are transferable to the University of Louisville. And all these developments have taken place in the last 10 years. However, I simply was able to resurrect and reconstitute the rich tradition that was already there. Simmons was always there, but it was minimized and trivialized the same way Black culture is minimized and trivialized, the same way Black people are minimized and trivialized. And the greatest minimization of Black culture is Black people minimizing their own strengths and their own powers. If we ever came to recognize how great we really are, there is nothing that we cannot do. Nothing.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Pastor Cosby. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story. And I want to talk again in the future. Thank you, brother. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much, Doctor. Love you. Appreciate you so much, man. Keep up the great work, my brother.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, everybody, this is Pastor Kevin Cosby, who's also the president of Simmons College, which is if officially our 107th historically black college. But in my mind, it's ranked number one. I love this school because I have so much respect for the vision of Pastor Cosby and what he's doing with this campus. And so, what I challenge everybody to do is please call that number 502 776 1443 and make a donation. Please support. We've got to support our institutions. We talk about this all the time. We must pay the cost for our freedom. I can certainly vouch for the idea that that this campus is going to be something special. I'm going to personally support as well in terms of being involved and helping to educate the students that are there too. And also, if you are in Louisville, you should check out St. Stephen's Church. It is a mega church with a mega mission. There aren't too many churches like it. I've seen churches all over the country. I've met with pastors all over the country, and I can say that in my humble opinion, Pastor Cosby, Dr. Cosby, is number one on my list because of what he's trying to do for his community. So once again, thank you very much, brother. I truly appreciate your
Thank you
time.
so much,
All
Doc.
right, everybody, and I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and don't forget we have a new film out called Resurrecting Black Wall Street, where we talk about the Black Wall Street atrocity, as well as how we can learn from the cooperative economics that built one of the greatest and most prosperous black communities of all time. If you want to support the film, I hope you will, because we also work to employ black people with this money. Please go to resurrectingblackwallstreet.com. That's resurrectingblackwallstreet.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.